or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Kathy, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the August 2nd issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Every journey takes a toll. John Leguizamo discusses his role in The Odyssey by Kyle Buchanan. Even in the sprawling, star-studded ensemble Christopher Nolan assembled for The Odyssey, John Leguizamo stands out. As Eumaeus, the blind servant who awaits the return of Odysseus, Matt Damon, while watching over his master's wife, Anne Hathaway, son, Tom Holland, and aging dog, Leguizamo delivers a performance that is by turns shrewd and heartbreaking. The 66-year-old actor's career is full of major movies, including Moulin Rouge and the animated hits Ice Age and Encanto. Still, The Odyssey stood apart from the start. "This is so much bigger than anything I've ever done," said Leguizamo, whose transformation for the role included special contact lenses that rendered him nearly sightless. The Odyssey appears poised for a strong awards run that could include Leguizamo, but for now, he is basking in the film's huge worldwide box office, which he attributed in part to its diverse casting. "The movie is being so beautifully inclusive means that now this story belongs to all of us," he said on a video call last month. Here are some edited excerpts from our conversation. "It's astounding that you can make us feel for Eumaeus after he's introduced throwing a puppy off a cliff. Can you believe? I thought I'm going to be the most reviled person in cinema history. That's what they did with runts back then, only the strong survived. But the puppy was safe. There was somebody with a soft blanket catching it right off camera. It helps, of course, that your character bonds so well with the surviving dog. Argos. It's an ancient breed called a Portuguese podengo. I call it a Portuguese pendejo. That's Spanish for... I know what that's Spanish for. It's not the brightest breed in the world. There are only 75 of those dogs left. They're an ancient breed. But he was not aggressive at all, and he's sweet. I'm method, so I spent a lot of time with the dog, hugging him, kissing him, trying to make him my best friend. Do you know why that breed was picked? Because it's the most ancient breed that's closest to what the Greeks would have had. Nolan is a stickler for detail, and I give him such respect. He stands behind the camera. You know he's there with you. It makes me feel heard and seen and protected, because in this movie, I went to places that I don't usually go, like close to an emotional break. Does that take a toll on you? I am method, and I believe you have to really go through something. You can't pretend. And I did study at Lee Strasberg. I killed Lee Strasberg. He died after you took his class? I was in his class, and I did a sense memory that was so bad he didn't survive it. He passed away that night. Rest in peace. So, yeah, I believe you have to go through it, but I felt I was in capable hands with Chris. So I was able to go to really scary places within myself and dredge up a lot of pain. In the end, it's healing because you let it out. It's better to let it out than bottle it up. You're almost unrecognizable in this film. I kept telling Chris, look, I'm never going to work again. Everybody's training 24/7, looking studly, and I look like a testicle. But when I was younger, I lived for transformations. I thought that's what real acting was, to go as far away from yourself as possible. How did you feel before your first day? It was a combination of things. I felt incredibly ready, and I was nervous as expletive. Do you often get nervous before a shoot? Never. I'm not a nervous type of guy. But Chris Nolan, you blow people up in your head. I'd never worked with him before, so I didn't know what was going to happen. I had to play old, blind, all these emotional beats, and it was also 900 feet above sea level. They had to helicopter me up there. I'm on top of this cliff where you can fall to your death. Every plant was poisonous on this cliff. They told us, if you break the sap and put it to your eyes, it will blind you. What was it like to perform those high-pressure scenes in IMAX? I never worked with an IMAX camera. It's 300, 400 pounds, sounds like a lawnmower. On the first day I started doing my scene and he goes, "You don't have to yell." I go, "But I can't hear myself." And they didn't tell me it was 3 minutes per roll. Meaning they had to reload rolls of film during a long take. I had a 10-minute speech and it was like, cut. I was like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Am I messing up? And they told me, no, we've got to reload. Then it's like 5 minutes to reload because it's really thick and difficult, and there's only one person in the world can do it. Then I have to revamp myself up. And then again, I got 2 minutes in and it's already cut. IMAX camera aside, I would imagine that the practical locations and lack of green screen were helpful. The fact that everything was so practical makes it easier for the actors to act, and then the results are so much more real and organic. It's palpable that what you're seeing on camera is really happening. I mean, that incredible scene with the ghosts of the dead soldiers, stuntmen were buried underneath the sand with snorkels. Like 100 people were buried. Then they come up. Oh my God, it's so riveting to watch. I fear we've reached a tipping point where people don't believe what they're looking at anymore. So a film like The Odyssey resonates for feeling more real and tactile. Hollywood is starting to embrace AI and thinking that's going to solve things. Is it? The Odyssey shows you that that's not what people really want. I'm sure you saw Elon Musk say that he's going to generate his own AI version of The Odyssey. Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. It'll be phenomenal. Good luck with that fake, soulless, empty version. I just don't understand people who go out of their way to hate monger. Jose Marti, the great Cuban poet and revolutionary, said there are two kinds of men, those that create and those that destroy. This diverse cast to me is symbolic of the real world that we're living in. We Latin people are 20% of the population, and we're still virtually invisible, especially in executive and corporate rooms. You've been very vocal over the last several years about the lack of Latin opportunities in Hollywood. I was a very idealistic young man. I believed in meritocracy no matter that I came from an underprivileged background. But when I was in NYU, I was the only Latin person in my classes, which was shocking to me in a city where we're equal to whites in population. D.B. Sweeney and Andrew McCarthy were in my class going to 5 auditions a day, and I'm going to one every 5 months for a drug dealer or murderer. I started to realize that no matter what I did, no matter how talented I was never going to have the same opportunities as them. It's systemic racism I was dealing with for 4 decades, but it affects you because you start internalizing that you're not good enough. Otherwise, you would be further along. Now that I'm 66, I know it's not me. It's the system. In a 2022 essay for the Los Angeles Times, you called out Hollywood for casting Spaniards like Javier Bardem and Antonio Banderas in Latino roles. I feel a little bad because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Artists are my colleagues. I just get upset because colorism is still alive in Hollywood with Latin people. Spaniards are not Latino. They're just not. We need to have the whole diaspora of Latinos represented, not just white Latinos or white passing Latinos, because that's basically almost like casting white people. When it comes to representation, are there young artists who've told you that your presence helped them? Lin-Manuel Miranda told me that. Chris Diaz, who just wrote the book for Hell's Kitchen for Alicia Keys, Jorge Lindbergh, but even Matt Damon came to me and said when him and Ben Affleck saw my one-man shows, they realized, oh my God, if this kid can do it, we can write our own story. And they wrote Good Will Hunting. That's incredible to me because when I told my stories, I just wanted to inspire kids who felt like me, who looked like me. Before the Odyssey and Others by Jason T. Bailey. Admirers of Christopher Nolan will find a bounty of his titles on Hulu. Stream Memento, an inventive mystery presented in reverse. The space epic Interstellar, featuring a sensitive performance by Matthew McConaughey, and more. Memento 2000. Christopher Nolan's second feature and first big hit is an expertly constructed wind-up toy of a movie, spinning sheer exhilaration out of a fairly simple premise. A man with short-term memory loss, Guy Pearce, tries to solve his wife's murder. But Nolan augments the storytelling with a stylistic flourish, presenting it in reverse chronological order, so that in each new scene, the viewer is as uncertain about what's happening as the protagonist. Replete with neo-noir styling and a cast of top-notch character actors, including Joe Pantoliano, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Stephen Tobolowsky, Memento is a deliciously inventive mystery with a potent dose of melancholy right under its surface. The Prestige 2006. Between his first and second cracks at Batman films, the director Christopher Nolan slid in this twisty, stylish exercise in sleight-of-hand movie making, as if to assure the fans of his breakthrough movie Memento that he was still up to his old tricks. This time around, the tricks are literal. In The Prestige, Nolan tells the story of two stage magicians in 1890s London, whose friendly rivalry first becomes fraught, then deadly. Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale scheme and connive appropriately in the leading roles. A standout supporting cast includes Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall, and David Bowie. If you like dark thrillers, stream Black Swan or Presence. Black Panther 2018. Regarded as the finest Marvel movie to date, Black Panther pays lip service to its own cinematic universe, but it also transcends the limitations of contemporary blockbusters. The director Ryan Coogler, Sinners and Creed, with his rich visual template that is steeped in the aesthetics of Afrofuturism, deserves much of the credit. And in the character of Killmonger, played with both menace and pain by Michael B. Jordan, Coogler gives us an antagonist of genuine strength and complexity. The stakes are so high and the canvas so grand that the conflict and climax carry real weight. But it is also good old-fashioned entertainment, as indebted to Bond and blaxploitation as to its comic book contemporaries. Interstellar, 2014. When Christopher Nolan directs a space epic, you can be certain it won't be just a space epic. His 2014 blockbuster isn't merely science fiction. It is, per our critic, a sweeping futuristic adventure driven by grief, dread, and regret. Matthew McConaughey turns in one of his most sensitive performances to date as an astronaut sent on a complex mission of alien communication, while Anne Hathaway turns what could have been a drab sidekick role into a wrenching portrait of regret. Mamma Mia, 2008. The long-running Broadway jukebox musical featuring the zippy music of the 70s pop group ABBA was something of a punchline for New Yorkers, a go-to example of how far the Great White Way had gone in its relentless pursuit of tourist dollars. But the hit film adaptation, directed as the stage production was by Lydia Lloyd, is altogether irresistible, offering up the peculiar but undeniable pleasure of heavyweight thespians like Meryl Streep, Stellan Skarsgård, and Amanda Seyfried, indulging their inner theater kid. It was such a hit that most of the major players returned a decade later for Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, also streaming on Hulu. And while it doesn't quite match the frothy pleasures of the original, it does add Cher. And that's not nothing. You were listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. A fluid opera of transitions. Lily Elba, a story about one of the first people to undergo gender-affirming surgery, stars a trans woman in the title role. By Max Keller. There are many terms in music with the root trans. Notes can be transformed or rearranged. Chords can be transposed or shifted up and down. There are also titles of works like Richard Strauss's Death and Transfiguration and Arnold Schoenberg's Transfigured Night. When composing his opera Lily Elba, Tobias Picker drew upon many of these terms and techniques, but the one most important to his score is transition. In Lily Elba, which is having its American premiere at the Santa Fe Opera this weekend, the transitional passages aren't just connective, as they usually would be in an opera score. Instead, Picker said, transitional music becomes thematic music, and thematic music becomes transitional. This gives the work a propulsive, ever-changing sound. It's fitting that transitions would be so significant, what Picker called the structural bones of the opera. Lily Elba is about a gender transition. The opera, with a libretto by Arya Lev-Stolman, is based on the story of Lily Ilse Elvenes, or Lily Elba, a transgender woman living in Paris in the 1920s. Lily's story is also the subject of The Danish Girl, 2015, a film starring Eddie Redmayne based on David Ebershoff's fictionalized account. Elba, a Danish landscape painter born Einar Wegner, was one of the earliest recipients of gender-affirming surgery. Lily, sung by the baritone Lucia Lucas, was married to the artist Gerda Wegner, the soprano Silvia D'Eramo, who often used her as a model. Like many stories that inspire operas, Elba's had a tragic ending. In 1931, at the Dresden Women's Clinic, she had an experimental uterine transplant, which led to complications and her death. For his libretto, Stolman, who was Picker's husband as well as his collaborator, turned to primary sources, including Elba's posthumously published memoir, Man into Woman. Written in Danish, the memoir has 3 main translations, 2 in English, 1 in German. They're all a little bit different, Stolman said. These inconsistencies, combined with Lily's tendency to exaggerate, made Stolman's task challenging. His solution was to lean into myth, specifically the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, which has a long tradition in opera. One of the earliest operas is Monteverdi's L'Orfeo, and composers from Gluck to Offenbach to Matthew Aucoin have written Orpheus operas. Orpheus was the instrument of transition for Eurydice, Stolman said, bringing her back from the underworld. She was making a transition from death into life. Lily Elba opens with a play within an opera. Lily and Gerda attend an Orpheus play with dissonant, chant-based music in an early 20th century style. The myth doesn't map one-to-one onto this story. At different moments, Lily and Gerda each resemble Orpheus. In one scene, Lily says, Einar Wegner is not of the living anymore. And while Orpheus looks back, Picker said, Lily never looks back. Lily is always going forward. Despite that, Lily still holds certain ideas of her time. She believes that to be a woman, she must marry a man and have children. She creates her own dilemma, Picker said. The conflict leads to the sequence of events that ends in her death. The Santa Fe production of Lily Elba comes 30 years after Picker's first opera, Emmeline, premiered at Santa Fe. Set in a small New England town, Emmeline is a retelling of the Oedipus myth from the mother's point of view. There are similarities between these operas' heroines. They're both strong women who, in the end, make a choice, a fateful choice, Picker said. Emmeline was praised for its tunefulness. These days, Picker said, I think of my music as being tonal adjacent. In Lili Elbe, he added, the music has fluidity. It moves easily between tonality and non-tonality. Singable melodies still abound, including D'Aramo's aria, I See a Woman, which can easily get stuck in a listener's head. From the beginning, Picker had Lucas, a trans woman, in mind for the lead role. What I hear in Lucia's voice is difficult to explain because it is so utterly unique, he said. He met Lucas when he was casting a 2019 production of Mozart's Don Giovanni for Tulsa Opera, where he was the artistic director. Lucas sang the title role. He said he was immediately impressed by her vocal power and artistic nuance. Like Elba, Lucas is a trailblazer. When I came out, there weren't openly trans opera singers, she said. I know some people, a decade or two older than me, who were trans their entire life. They just came out after their career was done. Lucas, who is married to the contralto Ariana Lucas, saw parallels to her life in Elba's story. The way that I came out was at this opera ball in 2014, she said. My wife went wearing a Marlene Dietrich type outfit with a little top hat, and I was wearing a dress. People recognized my wife before they recognized me, and it was great to see their reaction. A similar scene occurs in Lili Elbe, when Lili attends a gallery opening in feminine attire. Some lines from the libretto, like I'd Marry You Again, were even borrowed from Lucas's life. We don't know what the historical Elba's voice sounded like. In Man into Woman, Elba says that after her orchiotomy, a procedure to remove one or both testicles, she developed a soprano voice, seemingly overnight, which makes for a good story, but would be a medical first. When testosterone becomes a dominant hormone, the voice can drop, Lucas said. But it's just a one-way street. Voices don't undrop, though voice training and something called voice feminization surgery can make them slightly higher. Throughout the opera, Lucas's voice stays low, though she sings higher when Lili is overjoyed or excited. I never try to go into falsetto, but I do sort of a voix mixte, she said, or mixed voice. Lucas's involvement in Lili Elbe makes it perhaps the first large-scale opera about a transgender historical figure performed by a transgender singer. She also serves as the production's dramaturg. A precursor was Laura Kaminsky's chamber opera, As One. Picker said that for the premiere in Switzerland in 2023 and for the foreseeable future, he stipulated the role of Lili Elbe had to be sung by a trans performer. Maybe at some point a cisgender person could do it, he said, but the learning curve would be steep. Picker, too, experienced a learning curve writing Lili Elbe, though he said he was familiar with the feeling of being outside the mainstream. Being and feeling othered is what we have in common, said Picker, who added that he had grown up gay and Jewish with Tourette's syndrome. When we opened it in fall 2023, we thought, this opera is never going to be as relevant as it is right now, Lucas said. But with trans rights under attack, it feels especially timely now. Picker, though, emphasizes the opera's broad appeal. I think the piece exists outside of time and current events. It's a story that anybody can relate to. Marriage and divorce and falling in love and dying. These are universal themes. By focusing on human emotions that touch us, Lucas said, that's one of the things that Lili does, is the piece sidesteps advocacy. Pop. Love transforms a heartbreak specialist. Sam Smith, known for songs about romantic disappointment, has a new album that's full of joy and contentment. By Melina Ryzik. When the singer Sam Smith gets stage fright before a concert, which is always, they envision the universe in all its vastness. How big the world is, how high the moon is, Smith said. How small I am, and how small this room is that I'm performing in, even if it's an arena. I look down on it from above and remind myself that this is okay and I'm safe. Smith dreamed of pop stardom since childhood and achieved it by 22. Scoring a worldwide smash, Stay With Me, in 2014, they have been a global phenom ever since, with a lustrous, octave-bending tenor that elicits chills and tears in equal measure. And yet, I really struggle, Smith told me one recent Sunday afternoon. Singing for me is an incredibly personal thing. You don't hear me singing unless I have to. At 34, Smith has spent the past 3 or so years burrowing into that need as their life turned somersaults. They moved to New York from their native England for a boy, the fashion designer Christian Cowan, who has now, Smith revealed to me with a giddy smile, officially become a fiancé. Smith's new album, Hazel Eyes, scheduled to be released on August 21st, charts the course of their romance quite closely. Smith began composing the yearning first track, Everlasting Love, the night before their first date with Cowan, and finished it deep in coupledom. As a crooner known for heartbreak ballads, this was seismic. Their first time writing about requited love, as they put it at a sold-out show in San Francisco earlier this year, proudly and pointedly celebrating a queer relationship. It's also the first record Smith has made fully on their own terms, outside the formal structures of the music industry. The teams of songwriters in polished studios, the rounds of A&R notes, which had otherwise scaffolded their career. Instead, buoyed by making a similar leap with Unholy, their 2023 Grammy-winning #1 hit with Kim Petras, Smith squirreled away with new collaborators, like the indie rocker Feist, producing a dozen dreamy tracks with a full gospel choir and a more handcrafted sound. Literally, it's the only album Smith has ever played an instrument on, the piano. And Smith's adopted home provided an unexpected lift. As a queer artist, as a partner, as a person longing to communicate and be understood. Being in New York, I'm not the only freak on the street, they said, as we perched over fizzy waters, then martinis, at Julius's, the historic gay bar in Greenwich Village that is one of Smith's favorite hangouts. I'm surrounded daily by people that are too much, and I mean too much as a compliment. Weirdly, in this crazy soup of an island, I have found peace, Smith added. Which is not to say that Hazel Eyes, their 5th album and named for Cowan's eye color, is pure contentment. There are darker moments, lyrics that flick at deception and pain, production that sounds like impending thunder. We listened to it at Electric Lady, the storied studio in the West Village where Smith recorded some tracks. They closed their eyes as they heard the ups and downs. At Love's Peak, you're like, is this too good to be true? They said. Sneaking in that duality was intentional. I feel all types of things all the time, Smith said. In my happiest moments, I can get really sad. An album made in the regular pop machinery might have brushed that tension away. But Smith has a new clarity and confidence, friends and peers observed, in not filtering off the edges. Since Sam's moved to New York, I feel like they really embrace the creative eccentricities more, said Simone Aldred, a Manchester-based songwriter and producer who first met Smith at 21 and who worked on their blockbuster debut In the Lonely Hour and on Hazel Eyes. They've been given free rein on this album to be really the voice that I know, that I've sat in a room with. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Newfound Serenity. For years, Smith's fans have sobbed and sung along to the singer's chart-topping anthems of pining for a cheating lover, I'm not the only one, of lonely self-sabotage, too good at goodbyes, of one-night stands that could mean more, the Grammy-winning Stay With Me. So when Smith stood on stage in their small but vast corner of the universe at a series of sold-out residencies in New York late last year, and then in San Francisco to introduce a new number called My Guy, the audience members very nearly held their breath. I feel good. I feel happy, Smith, in scuffed brown denim, announced one winter night at the Warsaw, a club in Brooklyn where Smith played 24 shows. In San Francisco, where Smith was the first performer to reopen the landmark Castro Theater after its renovation, they went further. It really feels like a lifetime I've waited to sing a song like this. Achingly sweet, with a doo-wop lilt, My Guy was created in one full rush, born of this genuine, blossoming awareness that Sam had met their person, said Feist, a co-writer on the track, along with the esteemed multi-instrumentalist Shahzad Ismaili. The finished song couldn't top Smith's original exuberance. He's mine, 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 so the vocals are from the initial demo. This might be the first dance of many future weddings, queer or straight, Feist predicted. That Smith's newfound serenity is coming at a moment when the rights of gay and especially transgender people, Smith came out as non-binary in 2019, are under assault, is not, of course, lost on them. Smith has been an outspoken member of the gay community since their 2014 debut album, unusually so for the pop world at the time, and sometimes inexpertly, too. 2 years ago, they started an LGBTQIA supporting charity, the Pink House Foundation. But as an artist, they also have their own statement. For me, there's something radical about being queer in this time, in this world, and singing love songs, Smith said. Joy amid strife is an act of resistance, they concluded, saying, I'm not going to allow the poison that I read and that I see to affect my way of loving. And that their retro-sounding ode, down to the girl group-esque background vocals, is about queer love. When Smith performed it, complete with cute choreographed hand flicks and an 8-piece band at the Castro, San Francisco's historic gay epicenter, it looked as if the whole crowd was arm in arm, swaying, hugging, rooting for them. Everyone wanted Sam Smith to finally realize this bliss. I've spent so many times crying to that song, Smith had told me in our first interview in May. It felt like a reward from the hard work of loving someone. Smith was dressed down, but still had a striking presence, like a redwood, 6'2", with russet hair and an upturned plume of a mustache. They twist when in thought. They are as vivacious and playful as their music is moody. Sam's sort of addictive to be around, Feist said. So optimistic and so positive and uplifting everyone in the room. Over the past few months, I sat for 2 interviews with Smith, watched them perform with Brandi Carlile and Ed Sheeran in Brooklyn, vamp in leather hot pants and thigh-high boots at the Castro, and give a heartfelt mini-concert at the Stonewall National Monument during Pride weekend. Still, I was surprised by how open and engaged with the city they were, with an Instagram account devoted to foodie exploits, how unabashedly they moved around despite attracting attention. I'd never walked down the street with someone that would leave a ripple, Feist said. Some of Smith's intimates worry about them as a highly visible non-binary musician. This cultural climate has a mandate of care for absolutely nobody, said Anna Heaney, the visionary singer-songwriter and artist, whom Smith considers a queer conscience foremother. They are a very authentically kind person, Anna Heaney said of Smith, and innocent, you know? And I'm older, and I've seen a few seasons of this now. But, she added, Sam is incredibly resilient, and resilience is a strength that understands its own vulnerability. A voice for the ages. Smith was raised in a village near Cambridge, England, in a pink house by fields and rivers where they would escape alone to recharge. I would just go off walking for 2-3 hours, they said. I talked to trees. Cowan lived 10 minutes away, but the two met online in New York 4 years ago. Even now, the waterfront is Smith's refuge. River and ocean imagery is all over the album, and they are dotted with maritime tattoos, including an anchor at the base of their throat. Smith came out as gay at 10 years old to friends and a supportive family with 2 younger sisters. Their mother, the breadwinner, worked in banking, and their father was a house husband, they said, and a caretaker. Their maternal grandmother and aunts figured prominently too. I grew up in a very emotionally charged femme world, Smith said. As open as young Smith was, wearing makeup and flower pins to school, they didn't know other gay people. All I had was my divas in my headphones, they said. Mariah Carey was the gateway. Hero was the first song Smith performed publicly with a classmate. At 13 or so, they went to a concert by their singing teacher, Joanna Eden, a jazz vocalist. It was just in a theater lobby, but she performed with such evident bliss. I was like, that's what I want to do, Smith recalled. They had already started writing songs about boys and longing. Over-dramatizing, they said, laughing. Success arrived quickly after they moved to London and supplied soulful vocals on a pulsing track by the electronica duo Disclosure in 2012. By 2016, they had won 4 Grammys and an Oscar for Writings on the Wall, a song for the James Bond film Spectre. The depth of their ambition distinguished them early, Aldred said. Sam just had a drive, he said. I was kind of taken aback by the drive, to be honest. And the voice. Smith's range from earthy gravel to falsetto wowed other artists too. The natural expression, the timbre, the scale, and the ease of it, marveled Feist, who had never co-written with anyone before. Smith invited her through an Instagram DM. Smith's vision first bore its fullest fruit on the cheekily raunchy hit Unholy, which Smith called a turning point. It sounds like the most fun they've ever had on a song, as the New York Times critic Lindsay Zoladz put it. But in the studio, Smith said it ran into opposition. There was a lot of straight male voices in that room, they said. Some people didn't get it, didn't think it could be on the record. Smith and Petrus prevailed, driven by their connections to the sound. I used to dance in my bedroom all the time in my mom's clothes in front of the mirror. I felt like that when I listened to the song, Smith said, adding, in a tense environment, me and Kim stood up and stuck our tongues out, just teased. And that's part of queer power, you know? Smith harnessed that in recording Hazel Eyes in unexpected ways. Oh Mother, a theatrical, rollicking track that flicks at both Smith's maternal lineage and queer notions of mother, was the biggest hill and monster of a song to climb, Smith said. They redid their vocals several times, dissatisfied with the energy. Finally, though no longer a smoker, they grabbed a pack of cigarettes, stripped their shirt off, and asked the studio manager to get a bottle of whiskey. Aldred recalled, I have never seen anyone give as much to a vocal in my life. Smith no longer hits their high notes the same way. Their vocal command has changed with age and experience. They once panicked about that, but now, when they listen to their voice on this vessel of an album, it soothes me, Smith said. You hear life within the instrument. Television. I like using every part of myself. Hannah Waddingham is a rare British star to beat a path from musical theater to the screen, by Eleanor Stanford. London. Hannah Waddingham stopped in her tracks when she heard a busker singing Kansas City by Lieber and Stoller. It was a busy afternoon on the south bank of the Thames in London, and a swarm of tourists and schoolchildren mostly streamed past without looking at the man strumming on a guitar. But the actress, resplendent in a billowing maxi dress as the breeze also rippled through her blonde bob, started dancing to the rolling rhythm and singing along. I'm going to Kansas City, here I come. I just want to get involved, she laughed. I'm like, budge up on the mic, budge up. Standing 6 feet 2 inches in heels, Waddingham, 52, is used to turning heads. Cynthia Erivo, a friend for more than a decade, described her as Amazonian in stature and in spirit and proud of it, adding, "It's a thrill to watch her in action." The passers-by who were giving her impromptu riverbank sing-along curious glances seemed to agree. They might have recognized her from TV shows like Sex Education and Ted Lasso, but Waddingham also has a 4-octave vocal range and is a rare British screen star who started out in musical theater. How funny of all the songs he could have been playing, she said, after giving the musician a tip and continuing on along the river. Not only is the 1952 blues track one of her favorites, the upcoming season of Ted Lasso, in which Waddingham plays the soccer club owner Rebecca Welton, opens in Kansas City. After 3 seasons coaching AFC Richmond, Ted, Jason Sudeikis, is now back in his home state. That is, until Rebecca visits to persuade him to return to London and take on a new coaching challenge, Richmond's women's team. Rebecca is so fun to write, according to Brendan Hunt, a Ted Lasso co-creator, because she's at a nexus of poshness and don't give a ness. Starting out as the show's bad guy, Rebecca was also the biggest role to cast, he said. And when they found Waddingham, Hunt recalled, thinking, "Oh, finally, okay, this is great," because she could go toe-to-toe with it. The 3rd season of the gently philosophical show was 2023's most-watched streaming original show, according to data from Nielsen. Many thought it would be the show's last, but the 4th season, which comes to Apple TV on Wednesday, kicks off a new team of characters' stories. The female players, and especially their assistant coach Alice, also bring out something in Rebecca, Waddingham said earlier that day, over a breakfast of coffee, pressed juice, and chorizo hash. Alice, played by Tanya Reynolds, navigates the male-dominated soccer world with much less glamour and charm than Rebecca, and initially there's a friction and frostiness between the pair, Waddingham explained. But as always on Ted Lasso, there is also growth, and after being a taut rope in season 1, Waddingham said, Rebecca continues loosening up in season 4. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Waddingham, who won an Emmy for the show in 2021, said she had loved the ruthless Rebecca since reading the pilot script, where her character imagines torturing her ex-husband with a splintered cricket bat. "This girl," Waddingham remembered thinking, "you're delicious." Waddingham's approach to the role is all gut, she said, and she doesn't read scenes from the script if they don't feature Rebecca, so she never knows more than her character does. Still, I think it's funny that anyone thinks I'm remotely like Rebecca, Waddingham said, holding her hands out wide to signal her confusion. I'm the wayward sister of Rebecca. Juno Temple, a close friend who plays Rebecca's on-screen bestie, Keely, agreed with that description. Although Waddingham has this whip-smart brain, this huge heart, and then this presence that is absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful, she is also quite a goofy nugget. Over breakfast, Waddingham could indeed be charmingly goofy, peppering the conversation with more expressive hand gestures, silly voices, and liberal swearing. Her voice was hoarse after giving her all on set for a Jason Statham action movie. The last few years have been busy. Last month was the premiere of her show Ride or Die, a buddy action series with Octavia Spencer that the two also executive produced. In 2023, Waddingham filmed what she called a totally old-school holiday stage special for Apple TV. And in Britain, she has had breakout moments hosting the Olivier Awards and Eurovision Song Contest. I like using every part of myself, Waddingham said, because it could have been very different. I could have not had any success. But since Ted Lasso premiered in 2020, playing Rebecca has let everyone know what I was capable of in the first place, Waddingham said. She grew up in South London, the daughter of a river police officer who patrolled the Thames by boat and an opera singer. Theater is 100% in my bloodstream, Waddingham said. As a child, she would roam the London Coliseum, the home of the English National Opera, where her mum performed. After drama school, she started auditioning, but her height was an issue. I would constantly get, "We'd love to use her, but we've already cast the man," Waddingham said. Why can't a woman who's 6'2" have all the same vulnerabilities and misgivings about herself, wobble as much as somebody who's 5'2"? For Rebecca, tall was not part of the character description per se, said Hunt, the co-creator, but tall and in certain shoes, often taller than the male lead, is like, that's awesome. Two metaphorical giants of British theater also didn't consider her height an issue: Trevor Nunn and Andrew Lloyd Webber. When Lloyd Webber first saw a 25-year-old Waddingham perform in 2000, he was immediately impressed by how she could hold the stage and her very rare star quality, he said recently by phone. He soon cast her in The Beautiful Game, a show he wrote with Ben Elton, and again in 2011 as the Wicked Witch of the West in a production of The Wizard of Oz. Waddingham was nominated for 3 Olivier Awards, Britain's equivalent of the Tonys, by 2015 when she performed alongside Cynthia Erivo in a concert performance of the musical How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. By email, Erivo called Waddingham a superstar, not just because of her work, but because of the way she has constantly shown up for me and encouraged me. Waddingham fought hard for all her success, while also refusing to compromise on who she is, Erivo added. I think it's what makes her special. She is herself through and through, and who she is magnetic. Waddingham has also resisted cosmetic surgery, wanting full control of my face, she said, and to look like I'm 52, because I'm actually more confident, more settled. She added, so why would I want to make myself look like I'm 30 when I wasn't as happy at 30? Her principled determination was also clear when, at 38, Waddingham finally became pregnant. She realized that the rigors of a theater run wouldn't align with the demands of parenthood. But on-screen work, which she'd always dabbled in, could provide more flexibility. The path from a Shakespearean stage to screen stardom is well trodden by British actors, including Jonathan Bailey, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Judi Dench. But very, very few musical theater stars really cross over to the film medium or anything like that, Lloyd Webber said. Waddingham said that her British agent at the time had been confused about whether to promote her as a singer or an actor, and had described her varied skill set as muddying the waters. Such a conversation wouldn't happen in the United States, Waddingham added. But 9 weeks after giving birth to a daughter, Waddingham started shooting season 5 of Game of Thrones, in which she played Septa Unella, whose face was framed by a nun's habit as she shouted "shame" at a disgraced Cersei Lannister. If all I had done in my career is prove that you can take someone out of musical theater and put them in a tight close-up, Waddingham said, I would love that to be my lasting legacy. Nevertheless, she added, whatever screens and stages she's appeared on in the last decade or so, there is just something about theater, the visceral, muscular nature of theater. Whitingham was about 1.5 miles from the South Bank busker by now, passing by Shakespeare's Globe. She would love to return to stage work, she said, and recently she has been considering opportunities, including one she was chomping at the bit to do next year. But Whitingham has been a single parent for many years now. I'm a mummy first, she said. So she turned that role down after realizing that her daughter, now 11, wasn't ready for her to be so tied up with work. Something has to give, and the thing that has to give is theater, Whitingham said. But, she added, I will come back, and I will do it how I do it. Dance. Painters' canvases scamper and fly on stage. Tim Foster is a shoe colorist for New York City Ballet, an artist and a calming presence. By Margaret Fuhrer. If you take the elevator at the David H. Koch Theater at Lincoln Center as high as it will go, then climb another flight of stairs and walk down a cinder block hallway, you will reach a small space that looks like a cross between an artist's studio and a chemistry lab. This is where Tim Foster paints ballet shoes. To be a shoe colorist for New York City Ballet, as Foster has been for 15 years, is to occupy a small yet important niche. Most pointe shoes and ballet slippers are manufactured in a pale pink, but the company's repertoire requires a rainbow of hues, like canary yellow for the ensemble of marzipan shepherdesses in The Nutcracker, or powdery blue for the butterfly soloist in A Midsummer's Night's Dream. In his tiny aerie, Foster, the company's first full-time shoe colorist, sprays and daubs hundreds of shoes each season. It is a delicate art. He must match costume colors exactly so that the footwear doesn't break the continuous line of the leg. And paint must be applied sparingly, painstakingly, so as not to change the feel of the shoe on the foot. As a former professional dancer, Foster, 73, understands the stakes. When they give you their pointe shoes to mist or to dye, that is a responsibility I take very seriously, he said in a video interview. It has to be right because it's their sacred tool. It's their violin. It's their oboe. For years, almost nobody outside City Ballet knew that Foster or his job existed. Then the documentary filmmaker Joshua Charo, who often profiles unsung heroes, stumbled across a City Ballet blog post that mentioned Foster's work. Right away, I was fascinated, Charo said in a video interview, but I couldn't find any other information about him. Earlier this year, Charo connected with Foster and filmed him discussing his past as a dancer and his work with City Ballet. Charo was delighted to discover that Foster had also been quietly making visual artwork. His shoe painting station is lined with white paper that becomes splattered with different colors over time. He uses pieces of that paper to create fanciful, Chagall-esque scenes, incorporating the residual splotches of some shoe paint. I just start sketching over the top of the paper that kept all the splatters and marks, Foster says in Charo's documentary, Shoes for Tim, which came out in July. I lose myself in it. Foster's job has become busier recently. Pink shoes, meant to approximate skin color, used to be a ballet costume default. But a few years ago, City Ballet became one of several ballet troupes to rethink ballet pink, adopting truly flesh-toned footwear instead. Today, each company member has a shoe shade custom matched to their skin. That requires a lot of painting. Naomi Corti, a City Ballet soloist, said in a video interview that she now visited Foster before nearly every show, to get her shoes touched up, yes, but also just to talk. Gentle and thoughtful, Foster has a knack for soothing pre-performance jitters. He always knows what to say because he's one of us, a dancer, she said. It's this very calming presence. He's like the heartbeat of the theater. As a dancer, Foster was both an early and a late bloomer. His father was in a country western band, and as a child, Foster and the daughter of the guitarist would sometimes dance for the crowds at barbecues and country clubs in the Pacific Northwest. By junior high, he was organizing lunchtime dances at school, bringing out a jukebox in the cafeteria. You would grab your girlfriend and do the boogaloo or the skate, Foster said. But he had no formal dance training until he enrolled at Lane Community College in Eugene, Oregon, and began performing his musicals. That was how he met his future wife, Nikki. Crafts was her surname at the time, an accomplished dancer and choreographer. She told me, "You want to dance? Well, you better get in class," he said. He began studying ballet and modern and was soon earning lead roles in local theater productions. In 1986, the couple moved to New York City. Foster eventually began dancing with the New York City Opera, now shuttered, performing on the same Lincoln Center stage as the New York City Ballet, and also in musicals in the city and on tour. "I was doing a lot of things all at once," he said. That stopped when Nikki was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2004. The dance work suddenly felt less important, Foster said. Seeking stability, he got a job in the wardrobe department at City Opera. Later, he began working with City Ballet, dressing the children in the Nutcracker. His shoe painting career was accidental. For a while, dancers had colored their own shoes, but that led to inconsistencies in hue and appearance. They said, "Could you do the painting?" And I said, "I guess," Foster said. Though he had no art training or experience coloring shoes, Foster found he had a gift for matching shades. "I can figure out what makes that gray different from a regular gray," he said. "Is it that it has green in it, pink in it, purple in it?" The ballets that involve the most painting, Foster said, are the big story productions, The Nutcracker, A Midsummer Night's Dream. But one of the trickiest is Jerome Robbins' The Concert. He has to match the costume's sheer blue tights, which allow the dancer's natural skin tones to peek through, meaning that each dancer requires a slightly different shade. You're taking that blue color and stretching it with the neutral, so it's a film of blue, he said. That took me a long time to figure out. Over the past few years, Foster has returned to dancing. His wife eventually recovered from breast cancer, but in 2013, he too received a cancer diagnosis. Treatment required removing much of the muscle from the back of his right thigh. As he recovered, dancing helped him relearn his body. "I started over, doing my own bar work, just trying not to get stuck," he said. "Walking was the hardest thing to do, actually. I can always manage to dance." Since the release of the documentary, Foster has been surprised and moved by viewers' enthusiastic responses to his artwork. "People seem to really enjoy these paintings, which sort of stopped me in my tracks," he said. He's now considering a showing of some kind. Each fall, City Ballet's art series asks a visual artist to make site-specific work for the theater. Corti said she would love for Foster to get that invitation. Charo's documentary caught Foster just in time. He's planning to retire soon, but first he hopes to train new shoe colorists. The goal, he said, is to create the smallest possible ripple of disruption in the dancers' lives. "I know how live theater draws everything out of you, even as it feeds you," he said. "Those of us behind the scenes, we just want to make it possible for the dancers to let go and dance." You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 2nd issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. We read from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section every Sunday at 3 p.m. Your reader has been Kathy. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the re-airing of this morning's Buffalo News. Following that at 6 p.m. is the Buffalo News Viewpoints. Stay tuned for this reading and more throughout the day. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability